You're listening to a podcast of Reelblack Radio with Mike D and Steph Renee. Fridays 11 a.m. till noon on 900 AM WURD and 900 AM WURD.com.
It's so hard not to like it. It's so hard not to love it. And people need to understand, if you don't dig in, if you only listen to the radio edits of these kinds of songs, that rap had 2 more verses.
Okay, on the album version?
Yes.
You know, it's weird.
Well, not even in the extended version, because they didn't even put the full 3 verses on the album version of the song. This one comes from the Quincy Jones musical biography box set.
Okay.
But I'm just saying that there are 2
There's
more.
2 more verses.
Yeah, 2 more verses. And I think they were just like, nobody will ever play this entire song on the radio. So.
Wait, so on the album version, the Thriller album version, it's longer, you're saying?
No.
On the box set?
No.
Oh.
You have the extended version of Thriller.
Oh, there's like a disco version.
Well, I was gonna say,
that's when they had those 12 inches. See, I didn't buy. Honestly, I didn't even buy Thriller when it came out. I didn't buy Purple Rain until maybe a few years after it came out.
What has he been drinking? What kind of water are you drinking, bro?
No, I mean, I had Off the Wall. And I love that, but when things it was on the radio, it was just getting played so much. It wasn't a record that I just ran out and bought. I was
Thriller on vinyl, dude.
Exactly.
I do too.
I had until my mold incident. Yes,
been there, hated it.
But
I didn't buy it right away. Is all I'm saying. Because it was on the radio. They just played it all the time.
Yeah, the stuff that program directors decide that you should hear.
I have eclectic taste, Stephanie Renee. I don't go with the flow.
Troy, he's saying this to me that he has eclectic taste. You are barking up the wrong tree, buddy.
I'm sorry, I didn't know about the 12-inch. I thought it was on the album.
No.
It's been so long. Well, it's good. It's good to see you again. I was away last week.
Yes, indeed. Well, you got to work. You got to earn the donuts.
Well, we're up in New York to attend the premiere of Ava DuVernay's movie, The 13th, or it's called 13th.
Yes.
And it premieres today in New York and LA in theaters, so it's qualified for Oscar consideration, and it's anybody in the whole planet can be exposed to this work if they have Netflix.
Exactly.
Yeah. So it's really good film.
And there are plenty of reasons why people, if they have not already invested in Netflix, should do so, that we're going to be discussing today.
We'll talk about some of the things that are on Netflix that we should be checking out.
Absolutely.
And as well as other things that are in theaters. Obviously, Birth of a Nation is a big thing to talk about.
Yes, that opens today.
Issa Rae's new show starts this week.
So excited.
So it's a blackety black. The people are just catching up. So there's lots of reasons to be happy to be black this week because we celebrate our culture.
Yes.
Probably more stuff out right now than there has been in quite a while. So plenty to discuss.
I feel like, though, as this show first began, we were in a similar season in terms of what was available in theatrical release because we were having the conversation about all the films that were coming out that were telling black stories. And we have a resurgence of that, not to the level that we saw 2 years ago. Certainly in terms of cultural offerings on the big and small screen, which is what Reelblack
if you include
is
television,
for.
it's probably more. Yeah,
it's definitely that kind of season. So I pulled up this article. I want to let you run the show, but I'm just curious to run some numbers past you and our listening audience so that you understand. I just finished talking about the potential strike for state faculty at universities and base pay, like what that is in various levels. And so when we talk about Hollywood, people are like, well, these are stars. They're making incredible money. And that's true. But the gap, which is where, we find ourselves arguing all the time when it comes to people of color, the gap between what the highest paid white stars earn versus what our actors of color earn is significantly different. Right. So some people may remember that this conversation, when it comes to the big screen, the conversation are the $20 million people. These are the people who between flat out salaries when they make films, or if they're also involved in production, what they make on the front end and back end doing films. So we're talking about the Will Smiths, the Brad Pitts, the Angelina Jolies,
Dwayne The Rock Johnson, Kevin Hart. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So these are people who are negotiating. They're up in the big leagues when it comes to how much money they get paid just to captain a major motion picture. In the television arena, this now comes down to, which I guess I shouldn't be surprised, but when I saw it in print, and this is available on Newsweek.com, ladies and gentlemen, Roland Martin tweeted out a little bit earlier this morning this article that talks about salaries. So The Big Bang Theory, which I love, I don't get a chance to watch now because it's on Monday nights and I'm at rehearsal, but their stars earn $1 million an episode.
Right.
This is the conversation.
It's the top show. They're getting Friends money, basically.
And I was going to say, and they're 10 seasons in. So, this is sort of the tried, tested, and approved hit show. And so they're earning $1 million an episode, just as Mike said, as the Friends cast did, as they were in their heyday. Behind that is the Gilmore Girls revival on Netflix. They get $750,000 per episode, and it's only 4 installments.
Well, Netflix is hemorrhaging money right now.
But Gilmore Girls, this is just not in our area. So Mark Harmon from NCIS, Mariska Hargitay from Law and Order SVU, Game of Thrones. Most of those stars are earning $500,000 per episode. And so, that's sort of the kind of realm that we're talking about. That's the
upper echelon.
Rate.
If you're established in television, you can make up to that kind of money.
Now, compare that to our top stars of color, right? Because none of those shows that we've just spoken of have any kind of significant people of color in their cast. And so we talk about the lowest paid star in this realm is Gina Rodriguez from Jane the Virgin. Now, she won a Golden Globe for Best Actress in a Comedy last year, and she only gets $60,000 an episode. So just think about now. Again, people say
$60,000.
It's great money. It is. Nobody's arguing this.
Okay, but there's the pay disparity
compared to $500,000 per episode for Jon Snow. I'm just saying that, people need to think of it within that context to understand how big a gap we're talking about. Julia Louis-Dreyfus, of course, is another highly acclaimed actress, was from Seinfeld, now is on Veep.
Extremely, yeah.
She gets $250,000 per episode.
Right.
So, and Gina beat her for that
an HBO
award.
show. It's not even on network.
Right. Yeah. Right. And then we talk about Blackish. Anthony Anderson, $100,000 an episode. Tracy Ellis Ross, $80,000 an episode.
Okay.
Compared to $500,000 and up.
Right, and that show's in its third year.
And it's doing very well. The cast of Modern Family, also on that same network, they all earn, the stars of that show earn $250,000 per episode.
Right. Well, I mean, I read the article yesterday and, posted on my Facebook, and we there was a huge back and forth. I actually got a lot of conversation. My man Donkwa Brooks, big shout out to him. He felt that it was sort of an apples and orange comparison, because you're talking about Julia Louis-Dreyfus, who's an established TV personality who was making millions of dollars on Seinfeld. She's not going to work for 60. No. But if you're talking about a show that's in its first 5 years, they're locked into a contract and they can't necessarily renegotiate yet.
Which brings us to Empire.
Okay.
Because now, again, we're talking about the stars of that show, Mama and Papa, Lion, Cookie and Lucius, earn $175,000 an episode. So people would say that's respectable money in the grand scheme of things.
But compared to
Philly's own, Brashear Gray, when we talk about the children, right? $20,000 an episode. Again, not money to sneeze at, but at the end of the day, $20,000 an episode, really?
Well, it's like the old Chris Rock joke. He talked about the minimum wage.
Yeah, right.
He said, I'm against the minimum wage, because basically when you're getting minimum wage, they're basically saying, like, if I could pay you less, I would. But there's a minimum wage. So, I mean, that's sort of your base pay. Probably $100,000 a star on an hour-long show is probably like the like right above. You said Jane the Virgin, 60. So that's, we're
But
in the minor
Jussie
leagues.
Smollett, We're talking about prominent star, $20,000 an episode compared to these other film stars that have translated into the show, and they all combine. Some people would argue that Empire is very much an ensemble cast. That where it might have been the hook. Terrence Howard and Taraji P. Henson may have been the hook to get you to watch it in the first season. Now that we're entering season 3, this is kind of an established show, and it's more of an ensemble appeal rather than any one actor or actress.
But the contract's probably on up. It's going to cost them a lot of money to get those guys back if the show stays on. I mean, but when I hear those figures, I just wonder, like, how much money was Whitman Mayo making at the time?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, it's like, that's Grady.
The Jeffersons.
We love him,
Right.
But what was he like, getting a parking space and a bucket of chicken? I mean, we got to do better, people. But we need to. I just feel like we just have to create our own system.
Don't forget the bottle ripple, Mike.
A bottle ripple. There you go. I want my daddy's records.
But it's important, like I say, everything is in context, that we can talk about the historical aspects of a lot of this, but here in 2016, we are still talking about this kind of wage disparity when it comes to the most popular shows.
Pay disparity, and also, Anthony Anderson's making 20 more than Tracee Ellis Ross.
Right. So
you
there's
got
gender.
Women, gender thing too. So it's something, it's always interesting when they bring those kind of things out. Every year they have different, the Hollywood Reporter tells you how much a producer's making or how much different jobs make and stuff like that. It's an interesting peek behind the scenes. But, I don't know. I mean, I don't think it's fair to compare what Julia Louis-Dreyfus is making to somebody who hasn't.
Yeah, I don't think it's necessarily a comparison between Julia Louis-Dreyfus and Gina Rodriguez. They were just showing
it's just showing the range. I got you.
Well, but I think that there is some significant room for argument when it comes to ABC sitcoms. So Blackish versus Modern Family is a legitimate argument, especially when it comes to ratings and how they do comparatively, even though Modern Family's been on the air longer. But we're also talking about highly acclaimed in terms of critical acclaim and market share in terms of ratings. They're doing pretty comparatively.
Yeah.
And so, there's a lot of argument for more parity in the way that these salaries are negotiated.
Legit. I mean, but I'm on the fence that you have to just pay your dues. I mean, last week I wasn't here, but they were also talking about Tim Burton, and that was the big hashtag. Like, why isn't he putting any black kids in the class?
Miss Peregrine.
And I'm like, well, he's made $2 billion for Hollywood without putting any black people in his movie. So I think that's his privilege to do it. Now we should have some pressure, if you do this, maybe you'll make some more money because you'll have people, and also culturally, somebody who's talking about outsiders all the time, Edward Scissorhands and big trees and everything, for him not to even consider a little bit of diversity. But I mean, you're always putting those people on the spot, and I'm like, well, just don't support that. Go see Queen of Katwe. Yeah. Which is really disappointing that it's not trending. It's not making as much money as I feel it should. And that's a movie that's made by people of color and women and powers and everything. That's the movie I would take my kids to before I saw Miss Peregrine.
So let's go ahead and take our break, and when we come back, we're going to dig into the films and television shows that you should be watching that uplift and feature people of color in all kinds of diverse, wonderful ways, and making sure that as you make your plans for the weekend, that you're including some of these offerings in what you're going to be taking in culturally. That and plenty more when we continue with Real Black Radio here on The Mojo on 900 AM WURD. Stay tuned. From the original motion picture soundtrack of The Color Purple, that is Miss Celie's Blues, voiced by Tata Vega.
Tata Vega, love that.
Written by Rod Temperton. I really need people to take in the diversity of what he was able to give. I never, and as much as I love this song, I never checked the writer's credits for this.
Right.
So until I started digging around, I was like, he wrote that too?
Okay, right hand of Quincy Jones. I mean, Quincy's loyal, and he really understands talent. I was so happy Like I discovered Tata Vega like 10, 15 years ago when her records were like circulating.
Yeah.
And they're on Spotify now.
Yes.
I mean, you're just in for a treat.
She's awesome. And she's adorable.
And that first album with it was Miss Troublemaker, something like that, Stevie Wonder song, just brilliant voice. I mean, I don't know why. I mean, well, she came out on Motown at a time when Motown was having a lot of issues and trouble. And but I don't know. You like if you like Tina Marie and you respect like what they were doing with Motown was doing with Tina Marie, you owe it to yourself. Take an hour out of your day and listen to Tata Vega's Motown albums.
And to see 20 Feet from Stardom, because she's also included in that film. Just, in people talking about the struggle, whether you have been extremely successful as a background singer or, have been on these bubbles where regardless of your talent, that these labels didn't know what to do with you. And so you floundered in one way or another. But clearly, Tata Vega is an incredibly gifted vocalist and just, suffered through some of that. The music industry didn't know where it was going and how it was going to get there. And, getting caught up in that part of things. But
I was looking at Rod Temperton's film. He also wrote the Oprah theme.
Yes.
So he was paid. He stayed paid. It's like So he yes. Cha-ching. So we have to get our next wave of artists paid by supporting their work this week. And there's so much out. And as I mentioned earlier, today marks the Netflix view of Ava DuVernay's documentary about the prison industrial complex, 13th, and it's a brilliant film. I feel
people say
successfully consolidates.
It's a three-tissue-er.
Well, I cried at Queen of Cotsway. I cried a few times at Birth of a Nation. This makes me angry.
Okay.
When I see this because basically it's a lot of information that we're probably mostly familiar with in terms of how many 2.2 million black folks in prison and but basically she connects the dots from the end of slavery, the Emancipation Proclamation, the 13th Amendment, which outlawed slavery, but left a clause that allowed, unless you were imprisoned, and they basically used that as a way to basically turn prisons into the new plantations. And then when with the war on drugs and the privatization of prisons, we created this whole prison industrial complex, and it's something that she really connects the dots for people. So like if you it's sort of like global warming with Al Gore. It's like if you just sort of had an inkling that there was something going on. Now here's a film you can look at, you can show people and say like, okay, well this is what's in place, and there's no doubt about it.
And if you haven't seen that, it's an Undisputed Truth is the name of the documentary.
No, Undisputed Truth is my Inconvenient Truth.
Inconvenient Truth.
Okay, what did I say? I don't even know what I said.
Yeah, no, you didn't say a title. I was just saying that for people, that's Al Gore's documentary on global warming.
And Inconvenient Truth. Yeah, Undisputed Truth. Mike Tyson.
Yeah. Okay.
Equally good film, Spike Lee. But so we're connecting dots again. Yes. So yeah, go see that. And then Netflix also has Luke Cage.
Yes.
I understand you guys are more caught up in it than I am. I'm enjoying it. You like my culture, I can tell from your face.
Well, who doesn't like seeing big chocolate and muscular?
I'm not a fan.
Whatever. I'm just saying.
He's supposed to like Misty.
And he's tall. He's taller. He's 6'3".
Okay.
So I appreciate the fact that there's an actual taller man on the screen as opposed, most guys in Hollywood are like 5'7". So no offense to the shorter men in the listening audience. I'm just saying that it's striking to see somebody with his size on the actual screen playing a superhero.
Right, in the Marvel universe. That's like and Disney, ABC owns Marvel. It's a very powerful way to get this out, and it's finally something for us. We've been talking like Black Panther and Luke Cage. We've been looking at comic books. We'll go spend money to see all Iron Man and all that stuff, but we wanted some representation, and the folks at Netflix and Chio Hodari Coker and our friend Charles Murray, who's one of the executive producers, have given us 13 hours of entertainment, and some of y'all fiends are already through it. You just couldn't wait.
It's just how that's what I did with House of Cards too. It's like they released the whole season and you just sit down and you go through it. But I want to give a special shout out to my buddy Erica Atwood, who wrote her first article for Huffington Post yesterday about her mixed feelings about Luke Cage because of the realities that Black men are dealing with on the ground in our society, and how problematic it is for people who already have sort of a pathological perception of Black men for us to appear bulletproof and in hoodies, all these things that make us seem more hulking and menacing. But it's linked on my Facebook page, and there's been some vigorous conversation going on in my comments section. So for those of you who have not yet had a chance to check that out, I highly encourage you. My page is facebook.com/Steph Renee, STEFRENEE, to read Erica's article and read my comments section and respond as you will. Because, as much as I love it, I think that her perspective is needed in our conversation about the series, because the line between superhero and reality is something that we say we want.
But I think that's happening across the board. I mean, you have Luke Cage. I mean, clearly the hoodie and the bulletproof. That's definitely a nod to Trayvon. That's completely
and it's
intentional.
Purposeful, yes.
That's completely intentional. And then with the Black Panther comic that Ta-Nehisi has written, he's addressing issues. And then my friend David Walker, he's done a whole series of comic books. We had him talking about Shaft on one of the early episodes, and he's gone on to do Nighthawk and all this stuff. So I think we have artists that are addressing these issues through their opportunity, through their art. Is it going to please everybody? I don't know. I haven't seen the whole show. I mean, do you have any feelings about it? Or?
I mean, I think that what I am impressed by is this idea of not just reluctant superhero, because we've seen that before, but this idea of embracing the concept of being a superhero for everyday people, which is what he is. Iron Man, he's the son of an inventor billionaire, and this whole idea of how he asserts himself into the world is all flash, all technology, and that kind of thing, where Batman for DC Comics is the more sullen, reluctant, going through tragedy and dealing with this. And so for Luke Cage to be all that but not looking for the shiny suit and the cape, the choice of jeans and a hoodie basically, and moving his way through Harlem and trying to be a champion for the people and protect them is a different kind of thing.
But I mean, so basically, I haven't seen all the episodes. You're further ahead. So but basically, it's sort of black on black violence across the board. So basically, updated blaxploitation in a way.
Yeah, but it's not as. It doesn't come across that way because it's the typical sort of money, power, respect. I mean, there is an underworld that he's dealing with, right? And then, the addition of other people who just don't like his presence, are hell-bent on removing him from the earth because of his, but, there's backstory, and I don't want to give,
I love the tag team villains with Alfred Woodard, and I can't say this brother's name yet, but he's in 3 movies already.
Mahershala Ali.
Yeah, well, he's House of Cards, of course, but I mean, he's on Luke Cage. He's also in Moonlight, which is Barry Jenkins' movie.
Indeed.
And then he's in Kicks. So you see a lot of that guy. And he's a little different each role.
Right,
really
he's working, which is a wonderful,
and
wonderful
Delroy
thing.
Lindo's like, wait, I could have done. What's going on? But,
they do look related. That's funny. But one of the other things that is one of my personal loves of the way that Chio has approached Luke Cage is that each episode in season 1 is named after a Gang Starr song, which means nothing for people in the listening audience that are not hip hop fans. But for me, that's wonderful. And in episode 11, this is not episode 10, which is not giving away anything about the storyline.
It's cool.
Episode 10 is named Dwick.
Okay.
Which came on in Shuffle on my iPod yesterday, which made me chuckle even more when I got home and saw it. And in dialogue in that episode, they talked about lemonade being a popular drink, and it still is. And so it's a line from the song. So it was just really well done. There's some things you just got to know.
Well, shout out to Christian Taylor, who is one of my NYU classmates, and he wrote that episode, Dwick.
Nice.
He's one of the producers on that show as well. So shout out to Chris.
Shout, Chris.
But doing big things there. You sound like Drink Champs. Yes, let's make some noise for Christian Taylor. I can't. I'm not gonna binge it. Maybe. I mean, like I started watching them last night, and I was watching it, and Luke Cage was kicking behind. I fell asleep. On Netflix they keep running like them back to back. Like unless you say stop, it'll just keep feeding you.
Well,
so I fell asleep. I woke up.
Doesn't ask you if you want to keep going.
No, it just automatically up next, and
it does
episode.
that to a point. But like I've fallen asleep on West Wing before, and maybe like 2 solid episodes in, when it starts to play the next one just ongoing, it goes basically, "Are you still there?"
Still awake? No. So I woke up like 2 hours later, and Luke Cage was still kicking behind. So I'm just like. Looking forward to it. He's throwing people around and bullets and people going off roofs, and so that's the antidote. Like if you can't necessarily stomach Birth of a Nation, which we'll talk about in the next segment, you have the escapism of Luke Cage.
But that's part of what's being debated in my comments section, which I find really interesting. Are the people who say that Luke Cage isn't fantasy enough for them in the context of comic books or the daily realities that we deal with versus the way that this world is pictured in the series.
That's a whole nother level. When they came up with Luke Cage, they were like, should we make him fly? No, they're not going to make him fly. No, we're going to give him a regular. That was part of the foundation back in the 70s when they said, what can we allow these superheroes to do? So I guess it was like a Black Falcon character. Maybe got some of that, but they always do that. I mean, it's the Disney thing. I'm still mad at Princess and the Frog. It's like we get a princess and then, oh no, they're frogs for like half the movie. It's like, okay, well, all right, this is not the same Princess.
But it was
Tiana
so
thing.
New Orleans. Anyway, so that's a whole different conversation for a different
there's
day.
always a catch to it. So, but we accept that.
That's Disney.
So no, I'm saying Luke Cage. I'm just saying like, or you can have 20,000 hours Luke Cage. He's never going to attack a white person. I guarantee you that. I guarantee you, there's never going to be like a white Mr. Big character or somebody that he confronts. Like they finally get rid of Marsha Shala or whatever, and they say, well, he's the man behind the man next to the man. No, they're going to keep it. They're going to keep it in Harlem.
That is interesting. Yeah, well, it's definitely.
And he's never going to fly.
He shouldn't fly. I think that's part of the character.
We need to express our imagination and what our possibilities are. Black heroes are going to stay firmly rooted within.
Part of my role is to drop some, I won't necessarily say inflammatory, but drop some discussion-worthy piece and let people react to it. I do this on my page all the time.
I'm just saying, Idlewild is as far as we're going to get to, like, unless you talk about the Afrofuturist stuff that's starting to come out. Up until now in the timeline, Idlewild is the movie that's most expressed any kind of creative imagination outside of our four walls.
I will ponder that during this commercial break.
Okay.
Because I love Idlewild, but I don't know that I framed it in the way that you just offered us. So stay tuned, ladies and gentlemen. More information about Black film and television you should be getting into over the weekend and in the immediate future as we continue with Real Black Radio in just a moment. Again, written by Rod Temperton, produced by Quincy Jones, with this bevy of stellar talent.
See, you're all in the Quincy. I would have been playing some Heat Wave for sure.
Hot to stop. I started with Ain't No Half Stepping.
Okay, all right. I'm sorry.
In the beginning of the program.
I was in transit. Don't beat me up.
I'm just saying. But, I mean, first of all, Stomp is one of my favorite songs of all time.
Okay, yeah, you're running the gamut.
And so, I'm just trying to give people a little taste of it. But, again, for those people who never read the liner notes of the albums and just might have with the name Rod Temperton, but didn't have an idea of the range of music that he created.
Yeah,
I'm just trying to tease people.
James Ingram, all those people. Yes. It's a big loss. I can't wait for 2016 to be over because we're losing way too many talented musicians specifically. But so we were talking during the break. I mean, so Idlewild I think expresses imagination. Now there's another movie that was teased, the trailer Tuesday. So the trailer for Get Out.
Yes.
By Jordan Peele.
Which is so
Blumhouse.
perfect. It's just, I mean, he could not have come up with a more perfect title, because we always joke about the fact that when it comes to the horror realm of film, you always know the black person's going to die first.
Right.
This is a whole film that's centered around black folks not necessarily dying, but certainly transforming
Yeah, so
once they are in this white town.
yeah, so if you haven't seen the trailer, I mean, it's Jordan Peele from Key and Peele, and he had an opportunity to make a horror film through Blumhouse, which is the folks that bring you The Purge and all these things. Like,
Yes.
the whole model is to do these movies kind of like a mini budget. Like, they generally don't spend more than $5 million to make a movie, but then they spend a lot of money to promote them.
Yeah.
And Jason Blum is probably the most successful producer right now in Hollywood, because his net ratio is so much higher, because he spends little, but his movies gross hundreds of millions of dollars.
They become cult films all the time.
So
And
they had some money laying around. It's like, well, do whatever you want, Jordan Peele. And he said, really? And
really? You just gonna let me make a movie? Okay.
So this is what happens.
Right.
So basically it's about a interracial couple, a black guy and a white woman, which is something you don't see very often with the side of O with Mekhi Phifer. So he's going to meet the parents up in this town, and there's something wrong with the town. It's a little, was it Stepfordian, or there's something going on?
Yeah,
and his buddy little Rel, is calling over. He's like, "Man, I'm so excited." It's like, "I've never seen you so much in love," and you get to meet the parents.
Right.
And then
but don't forget who you are, man. There's that element of that
Right.
you feel in the conversations that they have.
So
and
they Google them, and it's like, well, wait a second. There are lots of black people have gone to this town, but they all come up missing. It's like, and then they like, get out, so and that was just a tease. So visually,
please, I was gonna say, for those of you who have Facebook accounts, the trailer is all over Facebook, so it would not be hard for you to find. You can search for Jordan Peele, or you can search for Get Out, and you can get a chance to watch the trailer.
Those are two
I'm
things.
so psyched at the idea of a black themed and black written and directed horror movie, because we just haven't had that.
Well, what's happening, right? So the black filmmakers, the young black filmmakers, they've learned their lesson, right? Because in the 90s, the same kind of thing happened. Everybody got ushered into Hollywood. Hey, you want to make let's make a movie. And they sort of like, okay, well, we'll make a movie that we think is going to sell. And then the people that make movies like The Wood and the Brothers, I mean, not to shout out names, but these are the kind of movies that were coming out in the early 90s with the young,
ensemble cast,
and really talented filmmakers. But then the movies, like, maybe you didn't, unless like Malcolm Lee has continued to work from that square, that cloth. But a lot of them, they hit a wall of frustration. Rusty Cundiff, all these people. I mean, really talented people, and they're like, okay, well, this industry is not necessarily ready for what we have to say. So now you have a wave of people that either they're veterans like Chio Hodari Coker, who's given the opportunity, but then Jordan Peele, all these people are like the same thing with Netflix going to Ava. What do you want to do? It's like, I'm gonna shoot my best shot. I'm not gonna pass this ball. I'm gonna shoot this shot. So you see a level of audacity in some of this work that is much needed, and very
this
exciting.
is the same kind of audacity that we used to celebrate in hip hop that has gone the way of the dodo bird, because people were so interested in getting paid that they have done this formulaic stuff that doesn't speak to any spirit of resistance or whatever else. It's all about girls and drugs and money, and not the level of the range of innovation that we used to have in the art form in mainstream.
Well, that could be a great documentary, trace the lineage of how the message has changed, and how we, as we internalize our this popular culture, what it makes us feel about ourselves. So I mean, one of the and shout out to Solange. That thing is on repeat for me. I don't listen to a lot of music, but you have issues?
No.
Okay.
I'm saying that I generally buy Beyonce or Destiny's Child, or those such albums, but I was extremely motivated to buy Solange, and I have still not had a chance to sit and give it a good listen yet, but it is on my iPod, and I anticipate having some intimate time with it this weekend. Yeah,
it's a concept album. Usually it's all about singles, but if you listen to the thing straight through, it takes you back to the days when you would sit and you listen all the way through. So shout out to her. She's putting it out there. And then Birth of a Nation, we can't go without talking about that. Did you guys discuss it after your screening?
Well, one of the things that we very much had come back to us from people who attended the screening was that they really want us to try and facilitate Q&As.
Yeah,
because
it's very hard to process.
It is very hard to process it, and walk back out into our streets with all the concerns that we have these days after seeing that history so vividly portrayed on screen. So giving people time, even. After seeing the film to process, even if they don't participate in a conversation. Because, people are angry, people are in tears. There's so much that is stirred up by this story that, I would love to find a way for us to really be able to do that.
Shout out to Manuel Glenn and the people at Early Birds. They hosted a screening last night that I went to at the Flowertown Movie Tavern. Now, keep in mind, this movie opens today, and it's on 2,000 screens, which means it's in over 20 theaters in the Philadelphia area alone. So if it's a movie you want to see, they're not making it difficult like they generally do on these movies where it's only at one or two places. It's virtually at every theater in the city. And if you're interested in supporting it, by all means go. I think it's an excellent film. But the discussion that he had Michael Cord come out and just Greg and Manuel and facilitated a conversation, and a lot of the elders were there. It was very good dialogue going on. But I understand like it is a lot to process for people.
Yeah.
It's a lot of pain. It points out the injustice, but there's no easy solution when you're talking about Brother Nat. But it is what we've been wanting to see for decades. They've been talking about we get these slave movies all the time. Where's the one about the slave rebellion? So now it's here. Amid controversy, and it's gonna be a difficult movie regardless. It was gonna be difficult anyway. So I think people need to deal with it. And if this is something that they need, and I think we all need to confront the realities of what our ancestors had to go through in order for us to survive, and
appreciate that. As conflicted as I feel about some of the other background of this, that there have been bigger stars who have tried to tell similar stories and could not get the financial backing to do it. So the fact that Nate Parker ran all the way to the finish line with this out of his own pocket in order to tell the story is absolutely worth acknowledging, because when somebody like a Danny Glover can't finance a film on Toussaint Louverture, same kind of concept of showing, insurrection and a fight for liberation, then, you really got to appreciate that some people say timing is everything. So that's part of this, I think. But the time has absolutely come for us to be able to have a deeper discussion in the Black community about resistance and the history of resistance. That Black Lives Matter is not birthed out of a vacuum, that it comes from a legacy.
And we've had Brother Nate on the show, and I've discussed the whole controversy on our podcast. I mean, I don't know if you had a chance to see the Breakfast Club interview that Nate did. He sat down for 48 minutes with them. I mean, he's crystal clear. He knows exactly what he's doing. He understands the risk. And, for all of us who are frustrated with the 60 Minutes appearance and the Good Morning America appearance, that was a deliberate choice of his. He did not, I really feel like he had the attitude like, well, you're going to hang me anyway, so I'm not going to play this game. It's hard enough for me to be able to choose roles, that I feel validate my talent, but for me to have to do a dance in order to make a couple more dollars, it's like, my investors already paid. The movie's out there, and as we all know, like, the best art is the stuff that lasts. It's the work that gets talked about years and years from now. So maybe, this buzz that we're experiencing now and whatever the box office results are for this movie are not as important to the fact that this movie exists and it's available to people. It's a story that we've never really had an opportunity to experience.
Absolutely. So it opens today. Everybody in the listening audience who have been joining us with the controversy, with the conversation we've been having around it, the reality is The Birth of a Nation. Nate Parker's The Birth of a Nation is in theaters today. Make your decisions as you will, but there will be plenty more conversation about good Black films.
Yes, and
TV.
And shout out to Issa Rae, Insecure, 10 p.m. on HBO, and if you already have HBO, you can watch it now on HBO.
That's right.
HBO Go. So big ups to
to her.
Indeed. And we'll do this again next week.
Yes.
Same bat time, same bat channel.
Amen.
And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we'll take a quick break and come back and we'll talk more about telling our stories from the theatrical stage as we are joined by members of the Putty Dance Company and their production, I Stand, which will be at the Painted Bride this weekend. Hang tight. More Mojo coming at you in just a moment.
You've been listening to a podcast of Real Black Radio with Mike D and Steph Renee. Fridays 11 a.m. till noon on 900 AM WURD. And 900 AM WURD.com. Follow us on your favorite social media like Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter for up-to-date information at 900 AM WURD and at Reelblack.